This is what we call the awkward moment where everyone is in silence waiting for the internet to connect.
Yeah.
I think we are live. We are ready. Hola a todos, comunidad. Excelente. Una vez más aquí en otra presentación en esta camino al KCD Colombia 2025 que vamos a estar celebrando en Bogotá. Mi nombre es Ángel Ramírez. Hoy voy a ser su co-host y embajador de la CNCF y OSPO, Cuba Astronauta, y hoy voy a estar aquí presentando a Chad, que vino a acompañarnos con un tema súper interesante. Vamos a ver qué hay detrás de cloud y cuando tenemos que estar haciendo aplicaciones que necesitan baja latencia y cómo, en este caso, Akamai puede ayudarnos con ese tipo de situaciones y escenarios que tenemos hoy en día. Para darle una pequeña introducción, pues sé que muchos lo conocen, pero vamos a hacerlo formal. Tenemos a Chad en Crowell, que es CNCF embajador, también es área principal en Akamai, y pues, muchos lo conocen por el ASIN de sigue, que es el libro que muchos utilizamos para aprender cómo prepararnos para este examen que tanto queremos pasar, y también es, digamos, el hombre detrás del Cube Skills, que vamos a estar también viendo prontamente. Entonces, con eso, Chad, te doy la bienvenida. I know that you're going to do it in English, but we're going to be doing English, Spanish, all together. How you doing?
Sí. Muchas gracias, Ángel. Yo vivo en Valencia, y yo aprendo español, pero hoy hablo español, habla inglés. Lo siento.
No, bien. Me encanta.
Y practicar mucho.
What if we do probably, let's say the next year, we do a full Spanish presentation? How about that?
I love it. I would love that. And living here definitely helps with that. And I can only hope to be fluent in a year. So yeah, that's a good goal.
Awesome. Chad, I'm going to turn it for you first. Before I give you the mic, I just want to thank you because I know that you've been you've been one of the champions helping the Spanish community, and I know that you're getting more and more involved, and I appreciate that because that helps us also as well to merge those bridges that usually is the one that sometimes is create those big gaps, which is the language, and you're one of the champions that are trying to bridge that gap as well. So thank you so much, and the mic is yours, and the everything here, you go for it.
Yeah, thank you. What a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And I mean, I wouldn't, I owe a lot to Quambi and you and Chrysler and everybody in that region. And we had a really good time last year in Medellin, and this year we're going to be in Bogota. So I'm really excited about the event and looking forward to seeing everyone at the end of August. And this is getting people pumped up, which I really enjoy. And I have some kind of regional specific stuff to talk about today. So let me share my screen and we'll get into it before I talk too much more. Okay, so let's see.
Mientras compartes, chat, quiero dejarles saber a los que están conectados tanto en internet como en Baby. Cualquier pregunta pueden dejárnoslas en el chat o en cualquiera de los comentarios que tenemos y yo las estaré compartiendo luego con chat para que pueda ayudar a responder si hay alguna pregunta, algún comentario, saludos. Nos pueden dejando por ahí y yo los voy a estar compartiendo luego, ¿ok? Listo. Excelente.
So let me know if you can't see my screen, but I'm going to assume that you can. So my presentation is, beyond the cloud, and this is very specific to the Latin American region, very close to my heart, and a lot of viewers, I'm sure. And why I think Akamai is better suited than any other hyperscaler to serve the community in a lot of different ways, in a lot of ways we are, which we'll get into, but serving the community in Latin America and kind of bringing things to the edge to serve the market and also provide something that I think Akamai can only provide, which is, high speed, uh, low latency applications that are kind of extending the capabilities of some of your traditional data centers. So as Angel explained and gave me this wonderful introduction, I'm just going to go quickly through this because we've already touched on this. I am a CNCF ambassador, KCD organizer, community group organizer, very heavily involved in the CNCF in every capacity. It's really my passion. And I've only been with Akamai for a short while, and I've been a CNCF ambassador for a couple years now. And so I'm happy to kind of introduce, in a lot of ways, the CNCF community to Akamai. I feel like through the acquisition of Linode, Akamai has taken the step into our part of the world in terms of, being more open source centric and developer friendly, and just being able to match some of the enterprise level capabilities that Akamai already has to kind of a global audience, and for small to medium sized businesses that are trying to just start up and get access to compute for cheaper than other hyperscalers, and also for a good use case. Matching those two together, it really is a perfect combination. And as this slide says, I'm principal SRE at Akamai. I've been at Akamai since April, so I'm very, very new, but I think it offers a fresh perspective, if you will, and also coming from the CNCF side of things and in the open source world, I'm able to see this through a different perspective than most, I think. So I couldn't get through a presentation without mentioning my book, which is Acing the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam. Me and Rafael Brito are co-authors on this second edition. The CKA exam, which many of you are very familiar with probably, is a very hands-on exam, which requires a lot of practice. So this book includes a lot of example scenarios and exercises that get you familiar with working in the terminal and working with the kubectl command line. So this is in MEEP, which is an early access program that Manning provides. But we've finished the book, and so we're just waiting for the production process. So it's very highly anticipated, being that there's a new version of the exam. The exam hasn't been updated in 3 years, so it's a pretty big deal. And so we've updated the book to match the current version of the exam. Back to Akamai world, and specifically in the Latin American region. So I just wanted to point out the differences between, in the upper right is a geographical map of AWS data centers and edge caches and edge locations. And then in the lower right-hand corner is Akamai's footprint and similar distribution or similar map, but as you can see, much more filled in with not only the the edge points of presence, they're called, but the distributed points of presence, which as a Linode user, you can take advantage of now, being that it's kind of joined in with the Akamai family. And the kind of benchmark, or not benchmark, but these items that we keep mentioning over and over again are the 4,350 points of presence throughout the world. So focusing on the region, like the reason why we have all these points of presence and not just tons of data centers, because we've noticed the demand in this region. It's really in need of compute and infrastructure, but more importantly, it's specific use cases where there's maybe a greater emphasis on mobile applications or low latency applications. So this is why we have points of presence, which kind of we're working every day to kind of extend the features and capabilities of those traditional data centers and our core regions to extend those into the edge, and we'll get into that in a second. But just from looking at the stats, um, the average latency from Sao Paulo to US East 1, which is, I realize that AWS has a region in Sao Paulo, but maybe if you're not, maybe if you're on AWS and you're in Colombia, you would naturally choose Sao Paulo as your core region, and then trying to go all the way back up to US East 1, which is the most popular AWS region. 120 milliseconds is quite a lot, quite long to wait. And so, AWS having only one region in that, in the Latin American region, and maybe 20 edge locations, it's really this is where like when I say Akamai is uniquely fitted to serve this region, Akamai with all of those dots that you see, hundreds of points of presence, and uh, you know I think honestly Akamai, you can benchmark this, but just the overall performance of networking and our global fabric is, I think regardless, you'll get faster speed, lower latency with Akamai, and we just have so much reach and so much efficiencies, being that we're kind of known for being a CDN, right? And so we're trying to kind of, like I said, match those with some of the compute offerings that we have now. But another piece of data that I wanted to share with you is that 38% of users in Latin America abandon apps, which means there's real importance there to focus on delivering low latency applications and kind of pushing everything that you can to the edge so that your users aren't abandoning your apps. And so, as a part of this, I'll put my email address at the end in case you want to email me and ask for these slides, which include a lot of links to a lot of research and everything that I've put into what I'm presenting to you today. But you know, Latin American mobile users, on average, will alienate your app if it's slower, as you can see here, 38% of users, but 35 to 40% will bounce from one service to the other, if one, so people are actively comparing, is what I'm trying to say. So this is what the data tells us. So the next slide, I want to just mention the demand a little bit more in this particular region, and these percentage marks are the percentage of population that are connected, so actively using, whether mobile broadband network or internet services or what have you. So there's six, the six that are listed here that have surpassed 10% 5G penetration, which means more than 10% of the mobile connections. Oops, sorry. So more than 10% of the mobile connections are 5G, or will be 5G when people are connecting. So there's a increase in demand. So we see here from this slide, Colombia, Peru, and Guatemala all have high usage gaps. So this is where somebody is trying to access high speed internet or high speed mobile coverage via 5G, but it's not in their area. So the demand is huge. The supply is not so much there as of 2025. So just wanted to point out that Colombia, Chile, Guatemala, Argentina, Mexico, and Brazil all surpassed double-digit 5G adoption. So those are the countries that are, leading the effort in this particular region for 5G coverage and 5G adoption. The only thing I wanted to add here is that, not only do we have the demand here, but according to GSMA, these 6 countries are no longer early adopters. They're kind of pushing the boundaries and really testing the what they have, and so this is the data that we're seeing. And so if we were to serve this market and meet that demand, it would potentially add 520 billion to the Latin American GDP and possibly more, and also provide over 2 million jobs, mostly supported by mobile and extending that mobile network, that 5G coverage. So this is you see the link to the source documentation here. So again, I'll provide my email address so you can ask me for either a link to the sources or a link to the slides, which have the links in them. So again, I wanted to point out the global fabric of Akamai specifically, and this extends to Linode. So just assume that everything Akamai specific that I'm pointing out here is also includes Linode. So Linode being part of Akamai now, acquired by Akamai, it's all under the same umbrella. And so I've heard a lot of, there's still a lot of confusion around that, unfortunately. So I like to point that out with, Linode and the LKE specifically, which we'll talk about in a second. This is kind of what we're focusing on when we talk about kind of this cloud native type architecture, which 9 times out of 10 includes containers. And when we talk about orchestrating containers, in a lot of ways, we're talking about Kubernetes. So the global fabric, again, 4,350 points of presence throughout the globe. There's 1,200 networks, 130 plus countries, and 700 plus cities. So it's quite an extensive network or a global fabric. And of that, you have access to all of the global edge network. So this includes core compute services, edge compute, cloud networking and security, and composable infrastructure. And I just want to mention that, going back to the networking capabilities at Akamai, some have said that Akamai is amongst the fastest, and we've benchmarked this, and you can see this under our case studies on our website. But our average customers are getting 40 gigabits per second in server networking bandwidth, which is pretty incredible. So we have, you could say that we have the fastest Kubernetes clusters in the world. So this is, bandwidth between nodes. So when you're building out your clusters to, many more and more nodes, that's the kind of in-server networking as a part of that internal networking fabric that we're talking about. So 40 gigabits per second is pretty fast. So of the core compute services, this is, you think of VMs, containers, Kubernetes, and this is, again, extends to Linode and Linodes and Kubernetes clusters and databases, etc. When we talk about edge compute, we usually think about gaming, streaming video. So Akamai has tons of customers that are, streaming video and doing so at, from really remote locations. So this is, edge compute, I would say, is really extensive and far-reaching. When we talk about cloud networking and security, perhaps the most notable, or what Akamai is kind of known for, which is the CDN that it provides, content delivery network, DDoS protection, web application firewalls, zero trust, architecture, etc. So this is kind of the cloud networking with security built in. And then the composable infrastructure is the ability to mix and match services, and mix and match not only in the Akamai world or Linode, the Akamai / Linode, but also we have this product called Compute Overflow. So this means that if you're on AWS today or any other hyperscaler, you can supplement that with Akamai resources. So Compute Overflow is exactly what it sounds like. If you have, if you're testing the limits, if you're reaching the limits of what you're using in AWS, Akamai can come in and provide a on-demand compute overflow, which is I think a unique offering. I don't think anybody else has that. So we've realized that, not everyone, I should say, everyone's on different hyperscalers and different clouds. And so we wanted to meet the people where they are and have them mix and match. So that's why we have the compostable infrastructure. I just realized I lost my time, so I don't have like a clock anywhere. So stop me if I'm going too long.
No worries. You're good.
Okay. Also good to hear that I'm not just talking to myself. So here's some use cases. So I've painted a big picture. So now let's dive a little bit deeper and get a little bit more specific in terms of what this looks like in the real world. So these are just examples. And so one example could be you are storing your static assets. So you can use Linode object storage to push and pull assets. This is S3 compatible, so it makes it easy to be more friendly to what you're used to in terms of object storage. You can use Akamai CDN to serve global traffic from the nearest edge node, and then we can reduce latency and offload bandwidth from your origin servers. Another use case is fast DNS resolution and trafficking. So we can use Akamai's Edge DNS. So we can have Anycast globally distributed to reduce the lookup latency. And then we can set up HTTP to HTTPS redirects, geo redirects, or A to B testing at the edge with Edge Redirector. So as we'll get into, there's a lot of different, CDN type products, for the lack of a better word, that you can take advantage of that really save you, when we're talking about latency, really save you some bandwidth and save you some hops is what you're really after, right? And when going from, point to point. Another use case is maybe you wanted to low latency, have low latency APIs and edge computing. So this is, and we'll get into this in a second. And I do have a demo, so hang in there if you want to have more of a hands-on interactivity here. But we can offload API endpoints, caching at whatever point of presence, and do that via edge workers. So we'll talk about edge workers in a second. And then we can keep our origin app. Let's say it's running in LKE in a data center somewhere, anywhere, and then run logic at the edge and only come back to kind of sync the data using like a Redis-like database to cache the changes. So this is using Akamai DNS and Linode ingress endpoints, perhaps, so you can connect those two in that fashion. Another use case is high availability and traffic distribution. So using Akamai Global Traffic Management, we can route users to the closest Linode origin. So this is so reducing the round trip, so you don't have to go back to, in the case we talked about before, going back to US East 1, we try to prevent that at all costs. And then you can combine this with multiple LKE clusters. So this is intelligently routing your request to whatever LKE cluster makes the most sense, or is the closest. And then finally, in the kind of a global routing standpoint, in the use case of the web application firewall, DDoS protection, and bot mitigation, we can protect our apps hosted in Linode with Akamai App and API Protector, and then we can add a WAF, rate limiting, and bot protection all at the edge. So we've all been there where we've gotten a DDoS attack, and we want to intelligently implement rate limiting, and this allows you to kind of offload that to Akamai, and so you can protect yourself before that traffic even reaches your LKE cluster or Linode. So we've been talking about edge, and possibly you're wondering how impactful is that, and maybe why isn't Akamai just building more data centers near me? So when it comes to comparing some of the other cloud providers out there, we're really focusing on the edge here, just because we can do more and more every day at the edge. And so using these sources that are listed in the bottom right hand corner, we can see that we have improved API latency, compute cost, and global reach compared to the other cloud providers. And I just want to point out that Akamai doesn't have any egress fees, and so you're really the cost savings can be even more, being that you can have your data travel around within the region or outside of the region without any surprise costs. So versus AWS, for example, they often they often force you to go to a server or region that's far away, because services are available there. We're trying to cache everything at the edge to do all that you can do, and more at the edge, and minimize the need for going back to those traditional compute regions. So just a press release here that I wanted to point out. We're expanding every day into the Latin American market. And so this is from 2023. So this is kind of we've been making a lot of work since then. That's what I'm trying to say. So not only have we been building in the Latin American region and expanding every day, but we have made partnerships and hook directly into the hosts that you are currently using. So we're directly tied into tier 1 and ISPs. So you think about Claro or Entel or TIM Brazil. So all of those, services that you're accessing today, or these, these, for the lack of a better word, data centers or points that you're getting your data from, you're accessing your data from, I should say. We're tied into that, so that brings us even closer to wherever you are in the region. So again, if you want to access this document, this press release, I can send that to you. I'll include my email at the end here. For example, so this is how we're, capitalizing on the edge and bringing those core compute services and products to the edge. Adaptive media delivery, live media streaming, and edge worker are just a few of the many different services that are available. And so these are the most common because, of the nature of what they're requesting, having to stream live data or stream live video, I should say, and being able to, have these resource intensive applications and requests from all around the world or all around the region. These are the most used products that we have. So in this particular example, we can use LKE as the core origin or the backend platform. And using one of these or all of these services, we can check back in with the LKE cluster and only keep as much as possible at the edge and plugging into either an ingress resource or an API gateway. And then we'll go through, like I said, we'll go through a demo of this actually in a minute. But the point here is that we can mix and match, like talking about compostable infrastructure. We can mix and match these services so that you're not always having to go back to the source, wherever your cluster is running. You're not always having to go back to that for every single request. We can tie in different services to have those services connect, but also keep everything at the edge where your customers are. So in the case of AMD or adaptive media delivery, it pulls HDS/dash segments from LKE video on demand origin. The LMS or live media streaming pulls live HLS stream from LKE live origin. And then EdgeWorker runs lightweight logic. This is limited to JavaScript. So we can do things like auth or geofencing or rewrites, or even the rate limiting. We can do that all at the edge with EdgeWorker. So this includes, these combined include, everything that's currently at the edge, or all those points of presence that I mentioned at the very beginning. Adaptive media delivery, live media streaming, EdgeWorker. They're all currently in those points of presence. So this includes request routing and header injection, JWT and OAuth token validation, rate limiting and IP restrictions, failover/redirects for resiliency, minimal business logic, such as geo-targeting or A/B testing. These are all the things that you can do today with Akamai at the edge and not having to go back to the origin, or in this case, the LKE cluster, to do any logic there. So we're kind of think of it as an extension of LKE in a lot of ways. So here's a more specific example with EdgeWorker included, and another thing called Property Manager, which is essentially just a routing requests. So the Property Manager routes request, the EdgeWorker validates that request, and then syncs up with the key value store. Think of this like a Redis-like key value store, and then syncs that data to and from your Kubernetes cluster. So end user initiates a HTTP request. Property manager evaluates the request against the rules. EdgeWorker executes JavaScript logic, so token validation, geochecks, rate limiting, URL rewriting, and validates that request. Edge key value store serves as a state sync between LKE and Edge. and then LKE hosts the API or microservice exposed by a node balancer are, equivalent of AWS load balancer or app load balancer is called a node balancer. So when you're on LKE and you create a service of load balancer type, this automatically creates a node balancer. It's just a specific term for the type of load balancers that are used in the Linode world. So yeah, this could be a node balancer that's behind, ingress gateway, or it could be, the an API gateway of any sort, or could be anything. Just something to check in with that that core microservice or the origin, so to speak, and sync that data. So this is what we're going to work on, and this is going to be the demo that I'm going to show you. And this is a public repo. As you notice, it's on my personal GitHub, but this is kind of the demo that I'm going to show you today. And this is a simulation. So I'm really sorry, but I wasn't able to get an edge worker in time to do a proper demonstration. But this essentially does the same thing, but we're going to use Envoy instead of the edge worker. I think actually this is better because it's kind of extends this to your everyday user. So the developers out there, I think, will be happy because we're using open source product here, CNCF, or Envoy is a CNCF project, and so we can get more hands-on and not have to necessarily talk to a salesperson from Akamai to be able to play this scenario out. And in a lot of ways, this is exactly like edge worker, but we're just using Envoy instead. So I did want to mention though that if you're wanting to get access to edge worker, there is a free trial that you could sign up for using this link. And again, I'll provide my email at the end, so I can send you these slides, and then we can go through this hello world, or you can go through this hello world demonstration here on the tech docs, and then go through this hello world specifically for edge worker, which we're gonna kind of focus on for this demo. Okay, so let's get into it. Oops. Let me find my mouse.
Sorry to interrupt. Just one thing here is that I have a couple questions. Actually, 3 questions on LinkedIn. Do you want to tackle now, or do you want to do it after the demo?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do them now.
Oh, okay, cool. So I think they're all 3 related, and I will say, with your permission, that maybe more details could be addressed in the KCD, which you're gonna have probably more time, and probably there's gonna be more people there helping from Akamai. But they'll relate to like telco. I will summarize it. I think it's more about like if you're seeing any case that Akamai worked on the telecom operators, especially focus on deploying cellular networks in LATAM. And the questions are very specific related to the low latency requirements for telco companies.
Oh, it's a good question. So I don't necessarily have that information. I just know that, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we are tied into, I guess I should, get specific and say what that means. So a lot of our services are kind of co-located with some of the telco services that you are accessing. And not to say that we share data center and share data, but just to say that, when you're using Akamai services, that extends to, whatever mobile broadband network that you're accessing. So I am, I'm not a salesperson, and there will be salespeople there at the event, the KCD Colombia in Bogota. But yeah, I don't have a good answer to that question, but looking forward to following up with you. So when I share my email address in a minute, please email me and ask me to follow up with you, because I have obviously access to a lot of people on the Akamai side. So
yeah, actually, I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna compile the three questions because they're very very specific about the low latency, like this SIMD and GPU distance between the stations and stuff like that. So maybe what we could do is I can compile those questions to you, and then you can just get back to the to Luis, which is one of the is the person asking these questions today. I know Luis is very specific on telco, so that's gonna be fun. I would love to have that conversation as well.
yeah, for sure. So just to go through this demo real quick, I did kind of tune this or pre-run these scripts, especially the ones that will take longer. So it shouldn't take too long. I do realize that we're 40 after. I was worried that I wasn't going to have enough slides and content to talk, but apparently I've talked a lot. So yeah, you can access this public repo, and again, it's just called Edge LKE Gateway. And so this is a simulation. So we're going to simulate the edge worker behavior using Envoy Gateway on LKE. So we're going to demonstrate how to deploy a regional API backend with latency-aware routing and simulate the at-the-edge behavior using Gateway API and Envoy filters. And at the end, we should be able to test, do some testing here. So to see the using curlip.com, we can test the latency, and hopefully we'll get pretty good latency. I do have my VPN on right now to Bogota, so hopefully this is as real as I can get. And then my LKE cluster, which I've already spun up, and this is just through Terraform. So if we go into the main.tf, it's not too complicated. We can see that we're using the Sao Paulo region, so BRGRU, Brazil. Yeah, Brazil. I'm not sure what GRU stands for. But anyway, yeah, that's where the LKE cluster is. So this is where we're kind of simulating kind of the Envoy Gateway front end, and then the LKE backend or origin. All right, so I've already spun up a cluster here, and so I've already run the Terraform apply. So now I can do get my kube config, which I should have already done. So apologies. So real quick, export my kube config variable, and then now I can see I just have a 2-node cluster. And hopefully it doesn't take that long every time. All right, so now that we have our cluster up and running, and install Envoy Gateway with a load balancer. So let's go ahead and do that. Install Envoy Gateway via Helm, of course. And while we wait for that, I'll just kind of talk through what it's doing. So this creates a service subtype load balancer. And like I said before, Linode will automatically provision a node balancer when you create any service subtype load balancer. A lot of other cloud providers do that as well, but just wanted to mention that it's a node balancer, load balancer. And so we're creating this on inside the cluster, of course, but this is what we're kind of simulating. So it's not necessarily in another region. It's still in the cluster, but this is the best that we can do. So this is what we're this is the Envoy Gateway, which is pretty standard, nothing too custom here. I just taking the version 000 latest, and then creating that namespace, and then dumping the operator in there, and all the custom resources, and even creates a service, which we'll see in a second. After we create this, it will, it'll be ready to receive traffic. So then we'll create our gateway class, gateway, and then HTTP route. And so if we look into that file really quick, so in the Kubernetes directory, we'll see two files, the deployment.yaml and envoy gateway. And so here's the YAML that we're just going to apply, just as you normally, which creates a gateway class, just called EG, a gateway, which is EG, which is has the gateway class name, and then the listeners, which is the most important, and then the host name is optional. HTTP route is what we're using kind of as an alternative to ingress. So this is what's going to route our traffic to our backend service. So in this case, it's called edge-API, which we get from the deployment. So we'll go over to the deployment, and we'll see that this is just a simple Go application that extends the API over port 8080. And we just added a readiness probe here, and we're exposing that health C endpoint. And this is where the HTTP route goes to, which is a type service, just a cluster IP type service. And then it's exposing port 80, and it's targeting that 8080 of the container. Okay, phew. So now that we've installed that, we can go ahead and proceed with the README. And so this is just trying to make it as easy as possible to run these things and for you to follow along at home. So the only, prerequisite, or the only thing that's required here is a Linode account. So you can do this at home at your leisure. So deploying the gateway class, gateway, and HTTP route that we just went over. And then we're going to apply that deployment, which is not only a deployment, but a service as well. And then we'll see that in the Envoy Gateway System namespace, there should be a load balancer type. There it is. And it's still working on getting an external IP. And this is the public IP of our node balancer. And so now that we have a public IP, we can go back here and we can plug this into this curl command. And hopefully we get a response. So 233.252. So we're just looking for an okay response here. So hopefully we get that. Yeah, I'm on a VPN and doing my clusters in Sao Paulo, so maybe I kind of shot myself in the foot here, but hopefully this works better for you at home. Once we get a response, we should get an okay eventually. Just a 200 response code, and then we can. Yeah, geez. This happened a lot quicker when I was doing this, testing this a few hours ago. So might be my VPN, but anyway, we can test the latency here with the curl command, and this is just kind of manual. And then if we wanted to get back more information, such as the connect time and the total time, we can do those manual commands using curl. Or there's a script that's in the root of the directory here. So it's just called test latency latam. And so this goes out and gets a more comprehensive testing using curlip.com, and kind of shoots out the results of that to the terminal. So that's more of a comprehensive test. Empty reply from server. Okay, so I'm going to guess that. Let's see if I run that script, which is called test latency. Okay, so we get better results with the script. So maybe that's the way to do it. Okay, so here's our tests. So we're testing connectivity, we're testing the latency, and so this is how we can kind of simulate the, in the case of using Edge Worker, you can go through these similar steps to test at the end once you have everything set up, and then we notice that we have pretty good connections. It should be pretty similar to what I got before, which is for a more human readable view. This chart kind of describes this test that I just ran a few hours ago. So it's total time Sao Paulo. Very surprising that that's the most, but 1.04 seconds, 0.54 seconds, 0.53. You can read the rest. So this is testing the curlip.com response from all those data centers, or all those points, I guess, all those regional points. So after we've done that, this kind of concludes the demo. But if you wanted to look further into Envoy Gateway documentation or the Gateway API spec, highly recommend doing that. Gateway API is becoming more and more popular. Gateway API, by the way, is something that's covered in the CKA exam. So tying that into the CKA exam. And just a couple notes for LATAM deployments. Use LK in Sao Paulo for lowest latency, and then use the Akamai Edge Pops that are in Bogota, Santiago, Lima, Buenos Aires, and Mexico City. So these are all the points of presence, those dots that you saw at the very beginning. Okay, so let me wrap things up and continue on my slides. So just wanted to point out some of the other activity that's going on, like outside of the technical, movement or technical activity that's going on, such as building data centers, building points of presence, and all that. So we're really showing a investment in the Latin American community. I just wanted to point that out and say that we now have employees at many sites throughout Latin America, and even leadership. So we do have physical presence, human bodies, warm bodies in those regions. So that's good. And then we've recently hired interns in Costa Rica and led a major beach cleanup and tree planting, which is a part of the Danny Lewin Community Care Days. So we, as Akamai employees, were encouraged to take part in some of these volunteer activities and bettering not only our compute infrastructure, but also our, trees and wildlife and some of the things that we'll need to survive as humans. And then the Akamai Technical Academy, or the ATA, it has been extended to Latin American countries, and so we can kind of bridge the gap in terms of that education piece as well, which is always good. All right, so to recap what we talked about so far in the last 55 minutes, Akamai has pretty hard infrastructure growth in Latin American regions. And so we've grown quite a bit in 2024, and we've also, we're surprisingly halfway through 2025 already. Can't believe time flies, but we've continued to invest and build more points of presence and create more efficiencies with our CDNs and have more energy investments. Akamai has a massive distributed edge network. So let me try that again. Akamai has a massively distributed edge network with over 4,100 locations in 130 countries. We talked about that at the beginning. It's by far the widest and comprehensive global network in all of the world. And then customers can deploy geo-distributed Kubernetes clusters closer to users, and by extension of these edge locations being, caching the data and caching those things closer to the users, and then enabling low latency, resilient app experiences. So I hope that I've, if you were to take away nothing else from this, it's like we can use Linode and LK clusters to extend and reach your users, really, at the end of the day, your users that are located in some of those remote regions throughout the world and throughout the LATAM specifically region. And then with Akamai's new infrastructure, and we talked about that kind of supplemental feature that we have to connect not only Akamai and Linode specific services, but also AWS, Azure, and GCP, and try to, create a compute overload is what it's called. And so last but not least, or second to last but not least, Akamai bundles CDN, DDoS protection, WAF, and Edge. So this is kind of the built-in security aspects of going with something like Akamai, as you can kind of offload some of that, and as you can with other cloud providers, I suppose. But I think we're uniquely positioned to do so because we have so many services at the edge. And then Akamai offers flat, predictable pricing with no egress fees. I want to kind of highlight no egress fees for object storage and Kubernetes workloads. So this is kind of our, if you go with Akamai, you'll be cheaper and still get that kind of global reach. Oh, I had one more. Offers real human support. Okay, so yeah, Akamai has some of the best support, like in terms of like I've gotten a lot of customer calls myself. Even we have lots of tiers of support in that you're reaching actual engineers. So like we don't have that thing that AWS has where they have a technical account manager. We have something similar, of course, but it's like when you call in for support, let's say you have a problem, you're going to reach an engineer, and we handle with care. And yeah. And so here's my email address, ccroll@akamai.com. And then everywhere on socials, I'm Chad M. Kroll, so you can find me everywhere there. And that concludes my presentation. So thank you for watching.
Oh, that was amazing, Chad. Thank you so much. I learned a lot as well from everything that is Akamai providing. So, and it's interesting how much, let's put it this way, involved is Akamai taking now in Latin America. We were discussing this in multiple occasions where Latin America specifically is becoming a huge region when we're talking about using the cloud, adopting the cloud as was supposed to be promised, right? So but the promise of the cloud is like to be portable, flexible, cost effective, and unfortunately, it's becoming the whole contrary the way that it's been taken. But it's amazing that the way that the Akamai is taking that to the next level. So, and it was very interesting about the edge workers. So I'm gonna explore more about it. I'm gonna check if there's any questions so far, but I do have one. Was about the edge. Would you like to maybe expand a little bit more about what really is an edge? Because I think some people, because they used to hyperscalers, like it's a huge big building where here is my region, right? That's why when you look at AWS, Google Cloud, etc., you see that they have specific locations and regions. They are entirely them, right? But in this case, Akamai and Linode before that as well, they were taking more the edge route where you were explaining this collocation. So would you mind to kind of expand a little bit more, like what that really means and how that impacts accessing other locations, like maybe hyperscalers cannot do as fast?
Yeah, so I'm not trying to hide anything. I think, LKE clusters still need to exist in those core regions. But I think what we try to do is we try to bring as much as we can to the edge. And when we say the edge, we're talking about the ability to service requests and handle scale and be able to have a further reach. And we're making progress every day to extend some of those core capabilities that you will see in traditional data centers to the edge. And I think Akamai is uniquely suited to do so just because of the efficiencies and the way that we have built our infrastructure and our networking, so that we can, utilize, sometimes magical ways of making it so your customers can experience the edge just as though they were operating out of a data center. So it's really an extension of the data center.
Yeah, and in a way, that's actually as I was saying, that's the promise of the cloud. Like the cloud really is, there's someone else's computer where you can access those services in a simpler way that you don't have to like do it yourself. So I appreciate that a lot. And by the way, I love the fact that there's no ingress egress fees. Unfortunately, I mean, I have the I'll say the opportunity and the blessing to do assessment in multiple companies in terms of infrastructure and cloud, and everyone focus on like, oh, we need to reduce costs in compute and data and storage, and they have, most of them haven't realized that, for example, storage is cheap, right? So you can have petabyte now with like almost an affordable budget, but networking is the most expensive item if they really look at the bill.
Yeah, I think I heard that Figma was paying something like $300 million a month to AWS, and that's all networking. So it's really surprising.
Exactly, and everything right now is using the internet constantly. Like I don't know if I can name more applications that are not constantly hitting the cloud in a way. Like even if you, for example, Figma, even if it's a desktop application that you're using in your computer, it's hitting the cloud all the time. So networking is basically the most expensive item that you were always gonna have in your bill if you really don't putting attention. So of course there's a lot of like managed services around it. So I love the fact that sorry, in this case, Akamai. I'm sorry about them saying Linux. I'm getting used to it as well. Akamai now.
Interchangeable, yeah.
Because I know Linux for a long time and Akamai as well, but I'm getting used to the combination now. Just Akamai. But yeah, so just the fact that that it's not a bill, it's not an item in the bill is very much appreciated. So. All right, so I think we're out of time. Chat, thank you so much, and we really are looking forward to see you at KCD Colombia 2025. And for those who haven't seen, Chad is also going to be there as one of the keynote speakers. Thank you so much for making this happen, Chad. And thank you as well.
I'm very honored, and thank you for having me today. And see everyone in Bogota.
Yeah.